The economy is completely out of control. Nobody's coming forward with anything, any solutions, because it's past having a solution. It's clearly been brewing now for many years, and it's like every single day you can just see this catastrophe inching toward the abyss. And we're at the zero line, and I think we're talking months away.
In this video, we go over Max Keiser's apocalyptic description of the economic state. He discusses the global banking system and its impending failure. Max believes we're at the end of fiat money's lifespan. He explains that economic techniques like trickle-down economics that were marketed as a solution to the debt problem have completely failed. Now we're left with financial problems that seem unsolvable. Max notes that the significance of the economic trouble is evidenced by the fact that debt interest has now surpassed even military spending. Max doubles down on the problems of traditional finance, explaining based on his 40 years of financial experience that the apparent stability of the economy and, by extension, Wall Street is a mirage. Everyone directly involved understands that it's a scam and there's no real value anymore. He strongly believes that we're months away from a breaking point, with no good options. We can either face a Zimbabwean-style depression characterized by hyperinflation, or a 1930s-style depression. Either way, Max believes we're headed for a depression, and it's not far away. From there, he shifts attention to how Bitcoin will affect the global economy. He's firmly convinced that as it becomes more and more evident through inflation that the traditional economy is doomed to go to zero against Bitcoin, adoption will increase. Unfortunately, he's of the opinion that we're not moving fast enough, and we might experience a world-altering recession in the coming months. Let's jump right in.
It's a global fiat money game, and different countries, their fiat money regimes are collapsing in real time, right? Argentina, or Lebanon recently had a complete collapse, or central bank collapsed. And inflation is definitely an indication that your fiat money regime is in dire straits, and inflation is breaking out in a big way. It's not going to return to where it was before this latest inflation breakout. And inflation and the collapse of fiat money is here now. People are feeling it right now, and the quality of life all over the world is being impacted by it, and it's being impacted in the US. People can't buy a home, people can't afford food. Price of oil and energy is now starting to ramp back up again. So it's playing out right now, and there's nothing that can be done to stop this inflation. The economy is completely out of control, right? So even the interest on the debt in the US is now over $1 trillion. So I think it's the biggest line item on the budget, bigger than the military. Thirdly, you just have in the background the ongoing collapse in fiat money world. I mean, the fiat money world is really at the end of a 300-year period or experiment, going back to the creation of the Bank of England, and this idea that fiat money could work. I mean, we know after 300 years that it never works. They all go to zero. None have ever survived or lost 99% of their purchasing power. So there's, what we were told for decades was, trickle-down economics or what have you. They were going to grow the economy, and the increased tax revenues, we're going to pay down our debt. That was the theory for years, that they're going to stimulate aggregate demand, and it's going to cause GDP growth, which will increase tax revenues, and we're going to pay down our debt. Well, that never, ever, ever happened. And it predictably never happened. It was just about printing more money and a lot of malinvestment, that is to say, thieving going on, and the capital disappearing. Trillions of dollars just going into a global black hole controlled by the big four accounting firms, this floating casino that never pays taxes, which is now over $30 trillion in big, right? So there is no coming back. There's always only two possible pathways. Either you enter into a fatal type of hyperinflation, or you're just going to default across the board and you go into a deflationary depression. So it's a depression in either way. It's either an inflationary depression like you see in like a Zimbabwe, or it's a deflationary depression like you had in the 1930s. But either way, quality of life is deteriorating. Nobody's coming forward with anything, any solutions, because it's past having a solution. Everybody knows it's a scam. Everybody knows it's a huge criminal enterprise. Everyone knows that they're part of a racketeering criminal enterprise. Jamie Dimon is not ignorant of the fact that he's part of a criminal enterprise. Every banker on Wall Street knows this. Every banker in the world knows this. Every broker knows this. The so-called efficient market theory doesn't exist. It's just a bunch of guys in a Bloomberg machines manipulating prices better than the other guy at their Bloomberg machine manipulating prices. That's the entire world of finance. There is no price discovery. To get back to my favorite topic of price discovery, all prices are fraudulent at this point in the game because they're not based on supply and demand. They're based on technologically the ability to move prices in the direction you want it to move to hit targets that trigger other events. That's what's being done. There's no supply and demand in any market at all, anywhere. That's why it's so confusing. That's why the economy is so messed up. That's why people are so at a loss to describe why things can be so messed up. It's because actually everything on any market anywhere is mispriced.
So far, Max has discussed the economic state and the trouble we're headed for. Coming next, he shifts his attention to Bitcoin and Bitcoin alone, as he believes other cryptocurrencies are a waste of time. He expands on how Bitcoin will replace the current economy after its certain collapse. Max explains that adopting Bitcoin is inevitable. It's the end game. The faster, the better. He also touches on how support for Bitcoin is growing, but he still doesn't think anything will save us from what's coming.
And with Bitcoin, it's kind of the end of price discovery because everything will be priced in Bitcoin eventually. Everything goes to zero against Bitcoin. And so for someone like myself who's been following this for 40 years, finance, markets, technology, Bitcoin is the holy grail. It's the end all. So I think we're entering a new epoch where the fiat money is going to be history. The CBDCs that are coming up by central banks are just an attempt to reinvent fiat money. And it's not going to compete with Bitcoin. People are going to see Bitcoin as the path away from centralization, CBDCs, and everything else that comes with it. And they're going to continue to embrace Bitcoin as a way toward economic freedom and just freedom in general. Bitcoin is rewriting the history books and with decentralized money and obviating the need for central banks. Central banks, as I was saying before, they're coming to the end of a 300-year period, a cycle. There's no point in having a central bank. So now I think they're going to become extinct. Meanwhile, there are now 3 or 4 candidates for president and other political offices that are talking about Bitcoin, right? So RFK Jr. talks about Bitcoin. Ron DeSantis talks about Bitcoin. Cynthia Lummis has also been talking about Bitcoin. So the political class is beginning to see Bitcoin as part of the solution going forward. And as you start to get into more of a Bitcoin frame of mind, this will be a transition from the fiat money world to a Bitcoin standard. And it'll be driven I don't see it taking decades, because it'll be the result of another colossal wave of bank failures, which is baked into the cake, really. The banks are insolvent. They're held together with accounting chicanery. There's nothing there. The central banks are completely devoid of any assets whatsoever. They're leveraged worse than Enron. I think the Federal Reserve is leveraged 90-1 or something like that. The world is a very different place, and everyone will say nobody saw it coming. But it's clearly been brewing now for many years, and it's like every single day you can just see this catastrophe inching toward the abyss. And we're at the zero line, and I think we're talking months away. We need Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't need us.
Max's predictions have started to come to play as more and more economists are drawing attention to the fact that the Bank of Japan, historically known to be the linchpin for the world economy, is facing turbulent times as well. The economic crisis predicted by Max might truly only be months away. It only remains to be seen what type of recession awaits us and the role Bitcoin will play going forward. To see the next latest crypto news, watch this video here.